some direction. Give me some direction. Able minds are working, open hearts are learning. Give me some direction.
Hello, my name is Nathan Navarrete, and I help unconventional evolutionaries such as yourself have more awareness so you're deeply satisfied in your life. A few ways on how I bring my why to life is through creativity and ongoing learning of the body-mind complex, observation, awareness, connection, and collaboration, communication and receptivity. A few of my core values are empathy and civil disobedience. I'm here with my friend Samira, and she's going to share her experience.
Hi, I'm Samira. I live in Orlando, Florida. I spent 15 years living in Boulder, Colorado, and I just moved back here to further my career I'm an electrical engineer and I work in the solar industry. So I'm really excited about that.
What are some of your core values?
Integrity, doing what you say you're going to do, being true to yourself, perseverance, not letting things get you down or hold you back when you have challenges, using obstacles as instead of something to get in your way and stop you, using that as something to climb on top of and get a better vantage point. A constant state of learning, growth, personal development is really important. And also, I like to call it radical self-care. That doesn't necessarily mean indulging and relaxing all the time, although that's kind of what people think of when they think of self-care, is taking a break.
Are there specific things you believe to be true in life?
A lot of people contemplate the meaning of life or the purpose of life or why am I here? And I would say for me, that answer is to give and receive love, to connect, to foster growth, to create life. So that could mean, having a family, or that could mean growing plants. So I believe that that's the whole reason that we're here, is to be part of that dynamic. If you look at the earth, without any human intervention or interaction, the earth just grows. There's just life and love and a constant state of development and changing. There's death, there's rebirth. And I think that that's what I would say is specifically true about life and humanity, is that is how we're meant to be in harmony with all of that.
Are there specific things that you're interested in?
My mission statement mantra is play, study, practice, create. And so that includes basically all of my interests, both that are hobbies for fun, just having a good time, having fun, getting together with your friends, hosting a silly costume dinner party, playing games, going to comedy shows. Yeah, I like to read, and that could be reading for pleasure, or it could be reading to enhance my understanding of a particular subject, whether that's philosophy or religion or engineering or the solar industry, just anything that sparks my interest. Also studying for things like the FE exam that is going to help me further my career. I'm practicing music, which is enriching for my soul. It's good for stress levels. Practicing meditation and yoga. Practicing my martial art, which is Krav Maga, the Israeli fighting style, or practicing dance, which is, a flow movement that helps me feel really feminine and alive and sensual. Creating delicious vegan meals, which is self-care and nourishment.
Are you open to share what happened in the past that led you up to this point of experiencing body talk with me?
Starting in a very early age, having a broken family. My biological father was absent, although my mom was remarried. I did have a father figure who was very loving, supportive. He taught me a lot. He's still a part of my life, and he is my younger half brother's father, so we're still connected. Having the absence of the biological father definitely created some stories in my subconscious mind at a very early age, when that's all developing your personality. That definitely garnered some feelings of abandonment or potential unworthiness, like, well, why did he leave? Like, was I not good enough, or was I bad, or things like that. There was also a little bit of sexual abuse and maybe some emotional violence, some bullying in middle school, and all of these things just kind of started to heap onto one another and create this sort of snowball effect. It was just like trauma bringing trauma, bringing trauma. And it took a really long time for me to step outside of the thought, the experience, and be like, I am a person having a thought. I am noticing I'm having a thought. And then you become aware of what's been going on, and you start recognizing that these thoughts are not me, and that's where the real work began. And that kind of started in my late 20s, where I started recognizing, like, there's a pattern here. Something's wrong. I'm doing all these self-destructive, self-sabotaging behaviors, and I don't want to. I don't like it. I don't like how it feels in my body, in my heart, in my mind. At that point, then it kind of became a turnaround where I started noticing that those traumas were continuing to unfold. Those patterns were repeating. And at that point, I was able to take a step back, look at the bigger picture, and realize what was going on, and like stop it dead in its tracks. Well, it wasn't really dead. It's just like stopping a train. At least I was able to like slow it down, or at the very least, stop putting coal in the engine.
Would you be open to share anything about relationship patterns of what happened in the past that led you up to this point?
I've had a couple good ones, and that's when I was kind of in a good flow state of recognizing where the problems were. And I was having not only open dialogue and communication with the partner I was currently engaged with, but also with myself. And so I was a little more self-aware during those times and maybe choosing healthier behaviors. And I was on a positive trajectory of self-care and self-improvement and growth. But when I'm not, when I was feeling insecure in the world, or feeling unstable, or feeling afraid, then those old patterns were playing out. And they were playing out in the sense that it became a vice and one of my addictions. And I was seeking unconsciously, of course, nobody would choose this intentionally, but I was unconsciously seeking out relationships full of drama, like just painful, hurtful relationships with people that were reinforcing these patterns of unworthiness, abandonment, self-doubt, any of those things that. And I guess in some cases it was maybe a distraction so that I didn't have to feel like I was avoiding working hard on the things I needed to be doing, of course, to better myself, because it's hard work. And, in those cases, it's like I turned to somebody to kind of become a scratching post for my yearnings and desires. And that wasn't working so well. And so in those cases, yeah, those patterns played out and brought more trauma, more pain, more abandonment, more feelings of unworthiness, more I have to work really hard to gain this person's affection and attention. And I have to jump through hoops and bend over backwards and pull all these strings, and trickery and manipulation, really, if we're being honest.
Are there specific things that you currently are more drawn or engaged to because of these events that happened in the past?
I had a pretty recent relationship that doubled down on all of these concepts, and it was relatively short, and I'm glad it's over. And have you ever spilled something in your house, and then when you clean it up, you realize how dirty that space already was, and you're kind of glad that you spilled something there because then it got you to clean it, and then you're just like, wow, it was really filthy and now it's clean. And that's kind of how I feel about relationships, and at least like this recent one is that I had to like make a mess in order to really clean it up. It's inspired me to make the choices that are healthier, and it has actually magnetized the right teachers and concepts and information into my life. And so what I've really become interested in lately, aside from, the things that we already know are good for us, exercise, meditation, yoga, all those things are obvious. But what it brought into my life was wisdom. And it brought people like Joe Dispenza, who I highly recommend everybody watch and listen to what he's got to say. He talks about neuroplasticity, rewiring the brain, the neuroscience and the chemistry behind our feelings, our emotions, our behaviors, and how it drives addictive patterns. We can't just think of addictive patterns like heroin, the addictive patterns are my relationships and my toxic choices. Abraham Hicks talks a lot about your vibrational alignment and what you're attracting into your life through your attitudes and your perceptions and how you care for your energy. There's an energetic hygiene that you have to maintain, and you keep your vibrational alignment such that you're attracting positive experiences, you're attracting blessings, abundance, good people, and great experiences into your life. Dr. Bruce Lipton, he is very similar to Joe Dispenza, and he and I had a very similar journey when he talks about it. I was raised in a Christian environment, but through a divorce when I was about the age of 8, I left the church. Like that just was no longer a thing. And I was like glad. I was like, good, because this doesn't make sense, And then I was atheist, and then I was agnostic, and then I rediscovered spirituality in that time frame I mentioned in my late 20s when I kind of like started to become self-aware of these patterns. So Dr. Bruce Lipton talks a lot about, because he's a scientist, he didn't believe, he was an atheist. He didn't believe in the spirituality. And through his work, we are a soul. We have a body. This whole interface is just so that we can interact with this dimension. And so his discovery really aligned with my experience and what I felt I had found in the course of my journey through spirituality and rediscovering spirituality. So I have like a particular resonance with Dr. Bruce Lipton for that reason. He ties together and marries that concept of spirituality and science. And he talks about how your belief shapes and creates your experience, epigenetics, and how you can rise above your genetics, your history, your traumas, your patterning, your family dynamics, and you can create the healthy body, the healthy mind, the healthy lifestyle, all these things that you want to create just through your belief. Those are the things that have come to me just most recently in the process of cleaning up the spill.
Based on what had happened on the past, it sounds like you're interested in these things having to do with the brain and the subconscious or unconscious and the way that we choose to view life and how that has an impact on our behavior.
One of the Scooby-Doo characters pulling a mask off of a ghost, and it's himself underneath the mask. And the caption says, when you find out who's really been ruining your life. There's a couple out there like that, like, you know, a guy sticking a stick in the spokes of his bicycle and then rolling around on the ground in pain. And there's like a little boy with a boot on his neck and he's like, oh, and then when it zooms out, the picture is like his hand is in the boot holding it on his own neck and he's like, ha 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 ha. And it's like, I think we can all relate to that a little bit, some of the self-sabotage, self-destructive choices. And there's silly ones, like I didn't stop to get gas on the way home from work last night and now my gas light's on and I'm late for work. You know, it's like silly little self-sabotaging things like that. But there are bigger ones. I was the person ruining my own life, and it was through the belief system that was created as a very little girl when I didn't have agency over my body, when I was being abused, when people were leaving and I didn't have control over that. And so it reinforced and created this belief subconsciously that becomes the operating system. And then that operating system runs the programs, and the programs were creating a situation where I was replaying these experiences and I was actively, unconsciously making choices that were going to reinforce negative experiences for myself.
Are you open to share what was going on in your life right before we did Body Talk together in person?
It was insecurity of like, where am I in life right now? I feel unstable. And so in the fall last year, I started kind of like praying for and asking for, visualizing stability, security, a feeling of being grounded on my own 2 feet, standing firm, solid. And I didn't feel that way because moving into a new house after traveling, I had debt, I had expenses, I had large purchases that need to be made, from a deposit to having my belongings shipped across the country, bills to get like my utilities started, having to make a deposit because I had no record with the utility company. So there were just like a lot of really large expenses that were just eating away. I had no savings left. I had debt. I was barely making ends meet. And people joke, you can live paycheck to paycheck, but with a lot of hard work and dedication, you can live direct deposit to direct deposit. And that's kind of where I was at, was like, I had a good job and I had a salary, but like, I just was barely making ends meet. And I felt like I was struggling. And rather than focusing in the ways that I needed to focus, which would have been healthy, I kind of abandoned myself. I abandoned myself. I stopped caring for myself in the ways that were going to create that stability. And I started looking for that externally. So rather than believing that I had all the tools and skills and capability, strength, everything that I needed to create that security, stability, feeling of belonging, you know, getting rid of those feelings of isolation, I started looking for that in an addictive kind of way through a pattern, through a relationship. And it was painful. It was suffering and drama, and it took my energy. It left me feeling depressed and drained. And that's where we came together. It was right at that point where I was like, wow, this is not working. I need to start turning my thinking around and start looking for ways to love myself and be my own partner and create security and stability and be healthy, because I'm trying to get all of that out of this person. And not only was he unwilling, he didn't have the tools to love me and support me the ways that I was trying to be loved and supported. And on top of that, I was honestly, even if he did, I was asking too much. I was asking something of another person that I should have been providing for myself. So that's where I was at. I was really wanting to turn that around, become a healthier version of myself who was doing the work to create my own feeling of security, stability, strength, acceptance, connection, all of those good feelings.
Was there anything specific that was keeping you awake, eyes open, staring at the ceiling at night right before we started doing the sessions?
My work-related stress, finances, and my relationship with this person. I spent unbelievable amounts of time just like going over all of that obsessively. It was exhausting.
Do you remember having any fears around that time?
Just not being able to make it. I think this is shifting for me finally, which is great. I kind of had this lingering fear of like, how long can I keep this up? I'm 37 years old. I've been working full time for 20 years. And I'm like, how much longer can I keep this together? Where does my strength run out? Sometimes I just feel like I can't do it today. Like, how am I going to get out of bed and get to work and like do all the things and the responsibilities? When is this house of cards going to come crashing down? When is my luck going to run out? When is the money going to run out? When is my strength going to run out? I needed a safety net or a crutch or somebody just to be there to catch me when I fall, because I felt like it would happen and I felt really unstable and unsupported. So that was like probably my biggest fear and the thing that I was avoiding, looking for comfort in another person. I would say another fear, because I've been through toxic, traumatic, abusive relationships, was the fear that this person was going to become a destructive force in my life. We all love to use the buzzword narcissist, and I'm trying not to throw these like pathologizing terms around as much anymore, but that was a fear, is that I'm going to end up in a relationship with a narcissist who's going to abuse and harm me, and that like my really awful experience from a couple of years ago is going to play out again. And I was already painfully aware of my patterns. So I kind of had this like self-doubt that like, oh, well, this is what I attract. And like, this is my pattern. It's like constantly waiting for that like demon to just like rear its head and like eat me alive.
With these reoccurring trends that were happening in the relationship, what was it costing you to stay where you were at?
My self-respect in a big way. It was costing me self-esteem, not in the sense that I'm not pretty enough or I'm not smart enough. It's self-esteem in the respect of, am I a valuable person? Do people want my time and energy and presence in their life? And by people, I mean the people I date specifically. Like, do they value me? Is my interaction with them meaningful and supportive? Like, do they feel like they want me around and they're choosing me intentionally because of who I am? Not for superficial reasons, but because I actually add value and meaning to their life. It was also costing me happiness. It was creating a lot of dissonance and depression. I was actually maybe even starting to feel like kind of physically ill. I actually caught a cold last winter for the first time in years, like 4 or 5 years. I got sick. That was a wake-up call because I stay healthy. So it was costing me my physical, mental, emotional health and well-being. It was making me feel depressed. It was making me feel so anxious and stressed. My nervous system was on high alert, red flags, just constantly in overdrive. So it was costing me peace, tranquility, and maybe it was costing me time and energy. Maybe it was even costing me some other like more material resources, in the sense that I was spending too much money on things that I was maybe trying to do to like foster this connection with this person, like in artificial ways, because it wasn't happening organically and authentically. So it was like I was trying to like drive 3 hours to meet up and do things and pay for stuff, and it just wasn't healthy choices financially. It wasn't healthy choices for my time and energy. So it cost me in a lot of ways, material and non-material.
Were there any other service providers that you were seeing during that time to help you move through that?
No, not at that time.
How did we connect?
A mutual friend who, her name is Shannon. Shannon studied body talk with you, and I know she did some work with you. And so she's a friend of mine. So Shannon and I are both connected through a business opportunity called Prime My Body. It's a beautiful company. We have hemp products, and they're very supportive for skincare as well as internal care. It's really good for supporting the nervous system. She and I got connected through that. And then Nathan, you and I were both in Florida. She made the connection that maybe we could be supportive to one another, that we have like similar values and similar interests. And we were not that far away from each other. It was only about an hour, 2 hours away, Gainesville to Orlando.
Yeah, thank you, Shannon, so much. It's been a gift of new connection with Samira, and I appreciate you linking us together.
Thank you, Shannon. Yeah, I just have to say, Nathan, you are one of the most supportive, loving, compassionate, empathetic, dynamic listeners that I've ever had the pleasure of speaking with. You are great at listening and reflecting back and asking the right questions, which help to unpack yourself rather than having somebody else tell you or advise you or direct you. You really lay the space to just kind of like help foster the understanding of thyself. The excellent listening, patience, allowing enough space, time, consideration, support. There's a complete lack of judgment, complete lack of any kind of like arrogance or, just it's just completely without any kind of I'm going to teach you and I'm going to show you and I'm going to tell you. It's just very like, let's find out together. Let's explore this together. I'll walk with you down this path and we'll figure it out. Here, I'll add my light to your light and we'll light this up and we'll explore this together and we'll figure it out. Brilliant listening and communication skills. And that's been extremely supportive. It's given me the opportunity to practice my listening skills and my reflecting back skills and all my communication skills. That was really positive and helpful, very supportive in that time for me, because I didn't feel like I had anyone else that I could talk to in that way, that would be able to talk to me in that way, that was so supportive.
Yeah, I feel moved hearing that. Would you be open to share how whatever you remember of awareness of body talk coming into your awareness, and did you ever have thoughts of what would this be like to experience this, or how would this benefit me?
So Shannon brought it up a lot of times in the times that I've spent time around her, like in Boulder when we were at Prime My Body events. She would mention it. I'd see her tapping and doing things, and she'd mention body talk. And then when you and I became acquainted, you talked a lot about it as well, and you suggested how this could maybe be supportive for you, and you just offered some of your tools, resources. You shared links. You really showed up, and not in the way where some people try to like force things on you, but you just were like, here's this. Here's this. Here are these resources, and I'll offer you, access to this and that. And here's a couple of ideas and videos. And if you feel compelled to try these out, then maybe it'll help you. And so I appreciated that. I got the sense that was a feeling of wanting to give and help and support, not like, I want you to do this, but just like, I would really love to share this with you because I think it would be supportive.
Is there specific things that you sensed or anything that I said or did where you felt comfortable to experience body talk with me?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of our first experiences together where you offered a service to me was where you did a card reading for me. And that reading, I just felt really supported, and I felt like the communication and the knowledge and wisdom was all there. And so when we got to the point where you were offering body talk, like I immediately just felt really comfortable with that. And I felt really held and supported. And I felt like the communication was really positive, loving, very grounded energy. And so as a practitioner that was going to be working with my subconscious and my energy, I definitely felt trust, and I felt safe and knew that I was not putting, sometimes when you work with some practitioners, you could be putting yourself in a compromising situation, and I felt nothing like that. I felt completely safe and trust. And so I absolutely felt fully comfortable and ready to dive into that practice 100%. It was following the destiny card readings and astrology discussions that made me feel like, yeah, Nathan really knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about, and does it from a place of humility, does it from a place of compassion and empathy, and genuinely wanting to be supportive, to foster growth in the world and helping somebody, me or anyone, to get to a better place energetically. It was very authentic.
Did you have a specific desired outcome in the sessions?
I wanted to definitely deal with my subconscious trauma and address the patterns and find out, in a deeper core level, what was driving those patterns. And this was something I hadn't tried yet. And it was being promoted as, something that really dives in, very similar to hypnotherapy or Reiki, kind of combined, like all rolled into one practice that would dive into the subconscious mind, into the energetic body, and deal with those emotions and the subconscious operating system, the patterning, the programming. This was something I hadn't tried yet. So I just really had a desire to try something new and experience it, find out what it was. It was very foreign and curious to me. I was like, oh, what is this? What is body talk? What does that mean? How does it work? And it was an opportunity to try something new that I hadn't experienced, that was interesting, curious, different, seemed like this could help. This could be maybe what I was looking for.
Were there specific observations that you noticed during the session?
There were a couple of interesting moments for me. Like, for example, some of the traumas that I was holding very deeply within my subconscious, maybe were not properly grieved. Like, I kind of went through my whole life being like, whatever, it's fine, that happened, it's not a big deal. And, maybe I never really processed those emotions because they happened at such an early age that I didn't have the tools or the emotional awareness or maturity to understand that these things hurt and that I need to cry about them and grieve them and be sad. And so those things kind of internalize themselves somatically in my being, in my energetic body, in my physical body. And I felt those come up. And that was really strange because, it's kind of like all this like deeply repressed, buried energy that was like so far in the depths of my subconscious, just kind of like crystallized. And it was just like one single tear just fell at one point. And I was just like, whoa, there's a tear for that? Like, I didn't even know. It was interesting, some of the memories that came up while it was happening, or I almost went into a state of hypnosis where my eyes were kind of like fluttering and rolling around. And yeah, it was just like a very unusual trance-like experience. It was very relaxing and almost like floaty and kind of transcendent.
Were there specific things that you noticed after the session, the following day or the week?
Right afterwards, my body felt tired, and yeah, my mind felt tired. After any kind of like really intense emotional dump or like accessing any kind of emotions, like you're going to feel a little tired. It's going to feel like, whew, like time for rest, and like that's why I intentionally made time to leave space and time for myself afterwards to just like relax and rest or go to sleep, do it right before bed so I can just like end the session and get into bed. At this point in time, there's like a marked difference in where my life is at. This morning, I have felt this before, but nothing like today. I woke up this morning just feeling like a supernova, like just like all this energy was just like blasting out, like love and positive vibrations. I was just like, holy crap. And I just like stayed there and was just like, like I think if anybody stood in my presence, they'd get a burn, like felt like the sun. I was just glowing. And I had beautiful dreams, and I've been dreaming about like energy, and I don't know, just things have felt so good and effortless, happy, positive, like beautiful things, blessings, everything I'm wanting is just coming to me like bees to flowers. And like I literally had a bee stuck in my hair this morning. The bees flying to me. And like, so I feel amazing now. And so I think that there's correlation there. That kind of came through like a tornado, a good tornado in a good way. But it like came through like a tornado. It was just like, fuck all this. Excuse me. But it's like, get this out of here. Just like blasted through and just like blew away all the old rickety houses. And like now this new beautiful development is coming up, and like all the broken branches were blown out, and now the trees just all this space to grow all these like big healthy new branches and flowers. And like, so that's kind of like what's manifesting and what's really alive for me right now is just like, wow, what a turnaround. I feel so amazing. I look at the music I was listening to even 2 months ago, and it was just so dark. Now I'm just like like bouncing through life, like people are calling me a ray of sunshine, and and I'm just like, I feel like myself again. Like, this is who I am. My name, Samira, literally means in Arabic somebody that brings joy and happiness to people's lives, and I feel like that again. Because
Awesome.
I feel joyful and happy, and because I do, like I said this morning, I'm radiating that. And like, yeah, this has really had a positive impact in the sense that it came through, blew away all the junk, and like now all this like healthy good stuff is growing in place.
Was there something where you felt comfortable to do another session following the first one?
Well, I was just curious to see if like any more deep repressed stuff would be accessed, like what was going to come up, because it's always weird to me, like whenever I do any kind of session, whether it's like coaching or energy work, like I go into it prepared and I'm like, okay, I have an intention. Like, this is what I would like to work on. This is what I'd like to let go of. This is what I'd like to focus on. And then it always ends up being something else. It's just never what I thought that we were going to talk about. So that happened both times where I was just like, oh, well, I thought we were going to like talk about this, but we're talking about other stuff. But it was like, that's what came up. That was the body talk. That's what the body was saying. Wow. It's like, we know what we need deep down, but sometimes it's like clouded by thought forms, concepts. And so we think we like over intellectualize. This is what I think. We're not getting into like, this is what I feel. This is what my energy is asking for. Yeah. So doing the second session was just kind of like, what's next? What's going to happen this time?
So noticing that there's a distinction of what the perceived issue is, and then the body's priority is a completely unique thing.
It was a gift of self-awareness. I think I'm pretty smart. I think I'm pretty self-aware. And then you find something out about yourself for the first time and you're like, oh, oh, okay. Didn't know about that, but cool. Now I know.
Cool. Now I know.
Yeah. Now I can work with that. And that's helpful because what you don't know can hurt you.
Were there specific things that you observed before the second session started?
Yeah, I was just like pretty deep state of turmoil. I even became dissatisfied with my job, and I was even feeling like negatively towards some of my colleagues and just feeling negatively about the work. And that's weird for me because a lot of people hate their jobs. I don't. I love what I do. I am so incredibly passionate about my work. I work so hard to get to where I am as an engineer in this industry. Working with photovoltaics, it's something that just means everything to me. And to not like what I was doing was like, something's off. I was off my purpose, where there was like something that needed my attention more. It became to where doing my job, my work, and my purpose was like inconvenient. It was just like, I have to go to work, and that's so annoying because I have all this drama that needs to be dealt with. And so I wasn't feeling stable. I wasn't doing my self-care practices, my spiritual practices to some extent, but like not with conviction, determination. Like there was just a lot of like wishy-washy, a lot of bargaining, a lot of compromising. And so it just really impacted my ability to be happy, to be effective at my job, and to even love my job. I was very isolated. I was not spending time with people. I was either just like alone, wasting time on social media, and just not doing anything that was meaningful for me. And so I was not in a good place. It was not my worst. It was not like the most depressed I'd ever been. It was not the most tragic everything had ever been, but it was not good. And that's where I was just like really entrenched, embroiled in this like dramatic personal struggle where I was not in a good relationship with myself. I was looking for a relationship externally, and that was also not a good relationship, because if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, you can't really have a good relationship with anyone else. You need to have a good sense of self in order to relate yourself to another. And I didn't. And a lot of his toxic energy was reflecting into my life. So those feelings of dissatisfaction and not being on my purpose and not enjoying the work I was doing. So I can't even necessarily say that I like actively wanted to transition that. All I knew was like, I was just like, I hate this. I hate everything. Everything sucks. And I literally was like, and this was again, very foreign to me, aside from not liking my work, I was waking up pissed off just like, fuck, just like waking up mad. Sorry, excuse my language, everyone. This is not a family show. But
It's real.
I just woke up like, I don't want to do this. I hate everything. I don't like anything. I didn't like the way my life was going. And I started to get those feelings of wanting to run away again. And that really upset me because I'd already done that. I'd already abandoned my career, ran away, got rid of all my stuff. And I was like, am I going to do that again? That didn't work last time because I ran back into myself. So then I just felt like desperate. I was just like, well, this isn't working and running away won't work. And like, where am I even supposed to go from here? And I knew something needed to change. I just didn't know how or what.
So were there specific observations that you noticed in this second body talk session in person?
That belief system of relationships with male figures in my life, like starting with my biological dad, abandonment, abuse, leading into relationships that were like repetitively abusive and abandoning, and then being afraid of repeating those, and then being again in a relationship that was like abandoning and abusive and toxic. Just really wanting to break that pattern and like not do things compulsively or impulsively. I was like in such a state of like stress and like just like heightened nervous system. And I just definitely felt this clarity and awareness of where I was currently in this relationship and how that related to my fears and apprehensions of like what had happened in a previous relationship that was extremely destructive and violent, and how that related to like other previous toxic relationships, and how that related to early childhood abandonment and abuse. And so it's just kind of like stepping back like in time, going through, and it's like we attract what we fear. Just like we attract what we think about. And if you are fearful of something, like we attract what we fear. And so I had effectively attracted what I was afraid of. And that was very reinforcing. And so I feel like what was coming up in that second session was just how all of this pattern was like still very alive and playing out and creating unhealthy attachment like that. When you think about attachment theory, and they talk about anxious or preoccupied attachment, that was very related to trauma, and then fear of the trauma repeating, fear of the bad experience repeating. I was definitely in like a really heightened state of like elevated fight or flight nervous system on red line overdrive. And it was just being on red alert all the time. I feel like that's a lot of what came up, is just kind of like that bigger picture awareness of like how repetitive these patterns were. I also remember feeling very relaxed, like just so tranquil. I had been feeling a lot of like high intense anxiety and stress and nervous system overdrive. And then like in that moment when I laid down and started the session, I was just like, like it was just very like, calm yourself.
Were there some observations that you were noticing after the second session?
It took a little time to integrate, but I think the first thing that fell away from the tornado was the relationship ended. So glad. And so the next things that started to unfold is like, well, I started to feel amazing. I started to want to do the things that I needed to do. I want to get up earlier. I want to go to work and do an amazing job and get a lot of things done and help people. I want to be positive and happy and uplift people because I enjoy seeing them feel good when I come around. I enjoy making them smile and laugh and bringing up the energy in a room that feels dull. And I felt like myself again. I was just back to better habits, better thinking, better practices, healthier choices. I was starting to release those negative beliefs, that negative thinking and those dark thoughts. And I just was beginning to once again operate in alignment with my values. So this goes back to the beginning of our conversation here with my values and integrity, and believing that, that I want to present myself a specific way in the world that's uplifting, and live in a healthy way, live with passion and with intention, And here I am doing it again. And it wasn't forced. I didn't have to make myself do it. I wanted to go for a walk at sunset with my dog in the park. I want to get up and meditate and work out. I want to write in my gratitude journal again. I actually feel grateful again and have things to write down. I'm seeing all of that continue to unfold. I have more clarity and awareness than I feel like I've ever had at this point in my life. And so it's just all really positive.
Did you experience your desired outcome with these 2 sessions?
I did. And it does take some time and patience. Yeah, I did. It did help me access deeper realms of thought and subconscious patterning and programming. And yeah, I feel like it did help facilitate the outcome that I was desiring.
Was body talk and the techniques or the procedure different than anything that you've done in the past?
It was there were a couple of moments where I was like, what am I doing right now? A funny one is there was a moment where you had me take some of my saliva and put it in my belly button, and I was like, what, really? Why?
Did I communicate clearly on what the purpose of that was?
Yeah, you did. It was just like so weird. I was like, what? Yeah, and it makes sense. That's how in the womb, how I received information and nourishment.
So people who are watching, what we're referring to is that the body has the opportunity to balance the microbiome and body chemistry, and it can address allergies, toxins, intolerances. So when that technique comes up, we ask the body, is it a priority to do the technique in the implementation portion after receiving information and communicating with the body? And one of them is putting saliva in the navel so it can read the information from the microbiome, and we can locate where in the body we're balancing and what it specifically is, so that when we do the implementation and the tapping, getting the brain to wake up, storing that information in the heart, and digesting the information in the intestines, that it activates the immune system to be able to process and self-regulate.
Well, whatever it was, I suppose it worked. Yeah, the techniques, like the muscle testing with the hand is what you used, and I imagine you may have some other techniques as well. But with me specifically, used my right hand and wrist, and I just remember like the sensation of that was like this like really gentle, light touch, and it was nice. It was relaxing, and the tapping, you know, on the different areas, like is also very respectful. I want to make that very clear because I know that that can be very triggering for people, that sometimes having a practitioner touch your body might feel invasive. And I just want to let everybody know that I felt very comfortable and very respected. My body felt respected and safe. There was no feeling of any kind of like intrusion or of personal space or, you know, nothing inappropriate at all. So I just want to make that very clear that like the contact felt very safe and comfortable and respectful. And it was relaxing. Like there's something about like this like fluttery feeling of being like tapped on the head and like tapped on the chest and tapped on the belly that just was like very calming. And, you know, and I think that directly relates to how tranquil I felt in the moment. The techniques were just like very like gentle and light, and it drew the energy up.
For those watching, when we say tapping, what we're referring to is basically it starts, you know, in the womb with the heartbeat and hearing that rhythm, and the indigenous cultures translated that into drum and dance. And then there was EMDR, and this woman did a lot of work with Vietnam veterans in tapping, which then that integrated into what some of you are probably familiar with, emotional freedom technique. And all of that got integrated in with body talk with them, including the Heart Math Institute science, tapping the head to reevaluate the state of the body mind, tapping over the heart to store that information and getting the body to digest it in the gut brain. Just so people are watching can, what does tapping mean?
It's a very different type of experience from any one thing that you've ever done, in that it seems to like roll all of these really healing type of activities into like one modality. And I just found that really interesting. Some of us have done Reiki. Some of us have done muscle testing. Some of us have done EFT. But this was like 5 different things all together. And then accessing the subconscious mind became a hypnosis. And like I was mentioning, like I had those like kind of like far away, fluttery moments where I felt like I was in a trance of some kind. That's one of the things that I thought was most remarkable about this whole experience, was just how like different it was. It was hypnosis and Reiki and muscle testing and EFT and more, all in one very peaceful, calming experience.
Is there anything specific in this service that matters to you or that stood out the most?
The patients, it was very compassionate, very empathetic, supportive, very interested in helping me directly, and very patient. Like it was on my time. It wasn't like, all right, we're going to move on to the next thing. All right, well, let that emotion go. We're headed on. Like, keep going. Like, it was just very like, there was plenty of time and space to allow things to organically move through the pace that was appropriate for me.
Is there a specific type of person that you imagine that this service would contribute support to?
Anybody that has any kind of interest in their personal development, accessing their deeper realms of subconscious programming, and getting in there and actively rewriting the scripting on that operating system. Anybody that's really ready to let go. I mean, honestly, I love to say, like, anybody that's tired, sick of their own shit, sick of your own bullshit, you want to do this, because this is a great way to understand why you're doing that stuff. It's going to come up. It's going to come up energetically, physically. You're going to feel it. And all that stuff that's alive for you right now, the other stuff that just doesn't even make sense. Like, I was just very surprised by some of the things that came up. I was like, the what with the what? That really? I didn't think that was an issue for me. It's all tied together, and things that we ignore. So anybody that's wanting to go deeper and go beyond the things that you notice that are obvious, go beyond those patterns, get into the subconscious and start to try to understand what are the driving forces behind that. And anybody that not only wants to find out and have that curiosity about themselves, but who also wants to actively start to transition and change things and start working with your brilliant mind's capacity for neuroplasticity and rewiring your thinking patterns, which in turn reprogram your moods, your behaviors, your attitudes, your disposition, your whole personality, and your whole entire experience will shift as soon as you go into these realms. So anybody that has, any interest in that, like, try it.
Is there anything specific you would express to people who might feel skeptical about it?
You don't know until you try. Have you tried it? Yeah, you can be skeptical all you want, but you know what I think? And, take it or leave it. But I think when we're skeptical, when we have an aversion or an apprehension, that's the other stuff talking. That's the stuff you don't want to be listening to. That is those little like gremlins trying to hold on, because they're like, oh shit, it's dark in here, and they just shined a light on me, and they're just kind of like, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And you're like, oh, we're doing this, and like, so that's what I think is the apprehension. So just be aware, because I think if you're feeling any kind of skepticism, there might be something that you're hanging on to, just a thought, because it's comfortable. Honestly, it sounds so weird to anybody that hasn't like experienced this, but when you're used to being depressed, you're used to being traumatized, you're used to being in fight or flight, that's your homeostasis. That's your comfort zone. As uncomfortable as it is, you're used to it. You're familiar with that. You created a whole identity around like, oh, I'm so dramatic. So any kind of skepticism I was feeling, I think, was a fear and apprehension of like, well, who will I be if I'm not any of these traumas? Who will I be if I don't identify with all this drama and suffering? Who will I be? Who am I? And now I get to find out. So that's great.
What do you wish to see more of in the world moving forward?
Empathy, compassion. Let's just care for one another. You guys need to watch Brene Brown. She talks about shame, which is one of those uncomfortable subjects that people, they're just like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. That's so, why did you bring that up? Like, let's not talk about shame. But she talks about shame, and I'm not going to get the quote quite right, but she says something about shame needs 3 things to survive: the isolation, is one of those things. And if there's a self-judgment that's happening when you can't talk about it and you feel isolated, then that feeling of shame can actually thrive. But the second you bring it to light and start discussing it, then the shame cannot exist in that environment anymore. And so, like, what I would love to ask of all of us, myself and one another, is that we just let go of those feelings of shame, that inherent feeling. Guilt, she says, is the feeling of I did something wrong and I feel guilty about it. Shame is the feeling of I am wrong. I am bad. I didn't do something bad. I just am inherently bad. That's what shame is saying when it's talking. And so, shame is alive when we're pointing at each other and saying like, oh, look at you, like, what did you do? And that's coming from our own feeling of when we were shamed for something that was bad or wrong. And like, I inherently feel wrong about this. And so when I see somebody else doing it, I'm going to judge them and persecute them for it. So like, let's stop doing that. Let's stop giving people feelings of shame. Let's be more empathetic. And what has allowed me to let that go is supportive people in my life who don't let me feel shame. They say, I understand how you got driven to that point. I understand how you acted that way. I've done that myself. I really would love to see more people just be compassionate and understanding, listen to one another, be supportive. Let's not be judgmental. Let's not shame each other and make each other feel guilty. We're already our own worst critics. Let's try and boost each other up, because what you focus on is what's going to grow and thrive. And so if you're focusing on people's negative qualities, that's what you're going to see, and that's what they're going to express. If it doesn't make you feel amazing, if it doesn't make you thrive, if it doesn't make you come alive and smile and feel amazing, let it go. And if you can't stop, try something like body talk, because it's going to help you to understand what in your subconscious is driving that behavior and that thinking, so that you can let it go once and for all.
Thank you, Samira, so much. This is a gift of celebration and humor, reflecting on our quality time created with one another in person through our friendship and going to the vegan pool party together in Florida, as well as experiencing Body Talk. Thank you.